Brad has asked me, if you knew what you knew now, would you still want to have stage? And I said, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, there's no question about it. As hard as his life was and the outcome that came from it, absolutely. He just gave us and this family so much joy. He's part of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He's part of our
I would
story.
say the same thing. And I would say most people would probably say that. As hard as that grief has been, it's walking through the initial loss and then the life after. I mean, I'm sure the same for you. There's your life before losing Sage and there's your life after losing Sage. And everything about me is different. My perspective, my outlook, the way I love others, And
I hate to say this, but it's better.
Right. Oh gosh,
I'm
absolutely.
a much better mom. I'm a much better wife. I'm a much better friend because of Sage.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Good Grief, Good God show, hosted by Grammy nominee and Emmy award-winning hit songwriter Brad Warren of the Warren Brothers. Join Brad monthly on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Tuesdays in audio or on YouTube for raw, honest conversation about surviving things that suck. Welcome to a special Mother's Day episode featuring not just one, but two extraordinary mothers. Michelle, Brad's wife, will be guiding us through today's episode as our guest host. And for today's guest, Michelle welcomes her dear friend, co-founder, and executive director of Faithfully Restored Women, Miss Jamie Hurd. Both Michelle and Jamie have experienced every mother's worst nightmare, the loss of a child. Yet, from their shared grief, they've forged a powerful bond of community and purpose. Now, Jamie spearheads the mission of spreading love and hope through Faithfully Restored, a cause close to Michelle's heart, a cause deeply rooted in Michelle's, Brad's, and Jamie's faith. I'm producer Pt2. To learn more about the show, Jamie, and Faithfully Restored, check the description where you'll find clickable links to connect on social media and to visit faithfullyrestoredwomen.com and goodgriefgoodgodshow.com. On the behalf of your host, Brad Warren, and segment producer and guest booker, Lisa Bolt, thank you for tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you in loving memory of Sage Warren and William Hurd.
Tell us about Ava.
Mm-hmm. So we got home that Monday, and the next day, Tuesday, friends, like you said, we had a house full of people. It was just, we didn't invite anyone over, and then we got a house full of people. And Brody said, I think we know where William's heart went. And I was like, what? And we pull up online and watch a news clip of a little 18-month-old girl from the day before. She was at Lurie Children's Hospital, waited 111 days for a heart. And we watch a news segment and see her parents, Amy and Brian Martin, get interviewed. And they just say, we are so grateful that someone in their darkest hour chose to give life to our little girl, and we will honor their life for the rest of hers. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love them. Even though our situation was so different, there was such an instant connection between Amy and I. And she writes back, and then we kind of confirm some of those details of what she knew about the heart that came. And in that interview, I will tell you that we watched online, we saw the cooler being wheeled in to the operating room, and we saw William's heart be removed from the cooler from the doctor and they were recording the entire thing and placed it in Ava. And the doctor said, welcome to your new home. I mean, it was unreal. And so we start messaging back and forth. They have an older daughter, Ella, who's just a little bit younger than Madeline. So we start talking about, Madeline and Ella, and we just instantly connected.
Yeah.
It was confirmed the next day by Lurie's that they did in fact fly to Nashville for the heart. So that was something I didn't know about organ donation, is those doctors fly to the place to retrieve the organs. So the doctor flew to Nashville to get the heart and go back. And so they confirmed we did go to Nashville to get the heart. And so someone from Vanderbilt reached out to me, and they just said, there's reasons why this does not happen. There's reason why you don't instantly know where your organs go, who they're matched with. And just keep in mind that, and it was really sweet. I don't like fault her at all for calling. I mean, I'm thankful. She said, just keep in mind, this could not take, and Ava could die, and then you're grieving another loss. And to me, I was like, thank you. I really hadn't thought about that, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I was like, thank you. But we felt like we just lost, went through the greatest loss we could experience. And like I said, if we could give them 3 more days with Ava, that's a gift to us. Yeah. It's a blessing. Yeah. We would have done anything for more time. Mm-hmm. So we would do it all over again, no matter what happens. And so the cool thing, we connected with them, and then it was, that's a really odd situation. You don't know how to prepare for it. No one's really ever in that. And the way they handled the Martin family, because you think about it, we figured this out, and then we're preparing for William's memorial. I mean, we're preparing for the funeral of our 2-year-old.
Which is a nightmare.
Which was, I mean, just something I wouldn't wish on anyone.
Yeah.
And they are rejoicing in their daughter's miracle. And so I just am so impressed of, I remember they sent this huge flower thing full of like flowers and candles that went on top of our cabinet. And they sent us that. They sent us little Hope for Amazing Ava bracelets to pass out at the memorial. And they just really handled that delicate situation in such a way that I'm just so impressed with. And that's, just a perfect, wasn't overbearing. We're very respectful. It was just an odd situation that no one knows how to deal with. So I look back, we instantly gained an entire family, and it has been nothing but joy since with them. And so we prepared for his memorial. Luckily, I remember sitting in those meetings with people at church, and luckily they just handled everything. I had people always come with me taking the notes, because you feel like you're overwhelmed and overloaded with,
for sure,
with information, with making these decisions that you get one shot and it's done.
Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful for the people around me that helped in those situations, and really took a posture of, we will never have all these people in a room again. And we have the chance to show them Jesus in a way. Everyone is going to be hurting in that room. And I didn't think about that. That was not coming from me. That was coming from people around us, in that we have a chance to show them Jesus. And so I'm grateful for that preparation and for the memorial and that time, when it's overwhelming. You don't know what to do. It's just feels like a lot.
I'll tell you a little story, because it's kind of fitting for where we're sitting right now. The night before Sage's funeral, again, the house was full of people, family, friends, people from all over. And it was late. And that week up until, right. You're kind of like having an out-of-body experience.
Right.
Like, you can look at yourself and all these people, but you're just kind of going through the motions. Right. It's just so much. And one of our friends asked Brad for guitar, and he just started playing some gospel hymns, and Brad's whole family is super musical. And so his nieces and nephews and then everybody from all different sides of the house just came in this room.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, you talk about feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit. We were crying, we were singing, we were laughing, and it was the most beautiful experience I have ever witnessed in this room. And so when we were approached by our producer, Matt, to do this show, I don't want to say I'm not a welcoming person, but I'm very private. And I'm like, I don't know if I like a lot of people in my house a lot, but that has definitely since changed since that night. But Brad's like, what do you think about this podcast? And I'm like, great. I said, but it has to be done in our home, and it has to be done in this room, because we are talking and inviting people to really get deep into their grief and their sobriety and just their personal stories. And I'm like, there has to be in this room because I felt the Holy Spirit. And even you and I sitting here,
Right.
like I said, I'm so out of my comfort zone, but I'm not.
Right.
Because I'm covered today. And I think you are too. And we're doing it for our sons. And just to be able to say Sage and to be able to say William and to share their stories with other people who are experiencing this. I'm like, it's nerve-wracking and my heart races when I'm talking about it. But I'm like, it's what we're supposed to be doing. It's how we want to honor our boys. So yeah.
It feels so right.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that
about this room. Yeah, this is our room. This is Sage's room. And yeah, it brings us so much joy in such a tragic way.
Right. I do look back at that time. I remember my cousin called her sister and she had just gotten there and her sister was flying in and she said, it's not going to be what you think here. Like it's not, because it was sad and overwhelming, but there were times like that. There were times of all of us sitting around and laughing and singing. And I remember I have a video of like us playing this song and dancing around and Madeline would stop it and like people would have to freeze, because it was like and I think part of it was having Madeline and it was like, we have a choice to show her like we believe what we're teaching her or we don't. Because if we do believe in that God has a perfect plan and that God made us, we would always ask William, like, who made you? And he would say, God made me. And I don't have it on video and I just really wish I did. But we had the opportunity there. And just like you with that room full of people, you chose, instead of being in your bedroom and to like, I can't do this, I can't be around people. But man, I have heard, and I can tell you, I'm sure those people in this room that night felt the Holy Spirit. They were around you and Brad, and just having you invite them into that intimate grief was probably so impactful.
Yeah. And
so I look back at that time after. It was kind of an out of body experience. It was just felt like a lot. And but it was a special time that you won't get back. And there's just something intimate in that deep grief and that valley that the Lord brings you to of total dependence on him.
Oh.
I think back of those deep valleys and it brings me to such dependence. Like I can't get out of bed without you. I can't get out of bed without that eternal perspective. Like, this is not our home. This is not the end. I will see my son again. Heaven will be so sweet. I think getting through the memorial, like you said, just kind of out of body experience. And then you have to go back to everyday life. Life still goes on, and staying in that planning of the memorial and everything, that was kind of like stuff had to be done. So you knew what you had to do. And then all that ends and then normal life happens. And for us, this happened right before Christmas. And so we had Christmas to do. And so that helped because, again, it was a process of we're getting ready for Christmas. We're showing Madeline that Christmas is still important, and here's what we do at Christmas.
But how did you do that? Because it's 3 years. This will be our third Christmas, and I still struggle. Like the idea, I go into stores now, and the Christmas music is already blaring, and the decorations are already up, and my stuff. I'm getting better. Like I will say, I'm getting better, and we do have Quinn and Jude, and I don't want to ever shortchange them because of what's happened.
Right.
But like the first Christmas, we're all opening presents and we're kind of just staring at each other. Like there was no joy in the celebration of Christmas. And so I do, to be completely transparent and honest, I do struggle with that. And
Absolutely.
I hate that. But it's just where I sit as a mom, and I always feel that I'm missing a child There's
Absolutely.
not the presents for Sage under that tree. His stocking is, well, I do put a Gatorade, an orange Gatorade in his stocking every year because, I mean, he's still part of our family and forever will be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, nothing's normal anymore. You say going back to normal life. Well, we're still trying, and you probably still are trying to figure out, this will be your 8th year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And normal just is not normal.
Right. Yes. That first year, it still, I think, felt kind of out of body because it was so close to Christmas that I was still kind of going through the motions of life, of getting out of bed and grief. And so, because that happened middle of December. And then, so I think it was 2 days after Madeline had her Christmas program at school. And so at her little preschool, and we went because it was like, well, we need to show her. I mean, I'm not going to not go to her preschool program. And so we had a bunch of people in town that went to her preschool program. And I remember so many people just like, I felt like I was being stared at like, oh my gosh, she's here. Like, but it was like, what was I supposed to do? And so, and it didn't feel to me like, oh, I can't believe you're here. You're so strong. It's like, no, I have to do this. I wasn't strong. It felt like survival. It wasn't anything of my own strength. It felt like survival. And so we show up and go through that. And it's still hard. It's funny you say about the stalking. A friend dropped off an angel. And so that, like a huge wooden angel. And so we put that in the middle, like with our stockings. We still had William's stocking, but then we put that angel in the middle. So it was like such a sign of he's here, he's part of our family, but like the empty stocking is hard. Like I love that you put something in it because that's sad. An empty stocking is sad, but you also can't bring it. You don't want to take it down. That's not
right.
So it is really, really hard. Christmas is it. I will say time does help. And I think of grief like an ocean. So, the way, and I didn't think of this, someone else thought of it. And now I adopted it, but it's like the wave. So you can be standing there and at times like that first year, like those waves are crashing into you. And it's like, you can barely keep your head above water. I
mean, it is like downright suffering. And I will use that word. Yes. Like as parents that lost a child, it is suffering.
Right. It definitely is. And then over time, it kind of the waves, now they're always there and the grief is always there, but it just doesn't feel quite as intense.
Right.
But then you have those days where the waves are crashing again. Mm-hmm. So it's always there. But I will say that time lessens, the grief lessens.
Right.
In the times of those waves crashing to where you feel suffocated and that you can't keep your head above water, for me have become less and less as the time goes on. But it's still there. I mean, really, like it starts in November. I start anticipating that month of December, and I can already feel myself, the heaviness coming.
Yeah.
But then it does help that Christmas and then that New Year. So whenever that happened, that first year, I remember someone at Christmas Eve service asked me, they went to the school where I worked and they're like, when are you coming back? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like the thought of going back to, I mean, I couldn't even, I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, oh my gosh, I'm barely making it through, and they were trying to make conversation with me. I mean, who knows what to say to someone that I have so much grace for people that say anything because it would have been so much easier for them to avoid that conversation. Mm-hmm. But that was what they knew to say of like, here's our connection. When are you coming back? They didn't mean anything by it. I have so much grace and really appreciate people saying anything. And to
versus
say
nothing.
Right. Versus nothing.
Yes.
And I always say, you can say, I don't know what to say. Like that's a safe bet. Like, I don't know what to say. But I've had a lot of people avoid me to not have awkward conversations. And that's just worse.
But in the same time, I've actually avoided some people too because I don't want to get in.
You're like,
I don't want to talk about it today. Like, no.
Right. And I think that's good. I think absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about, just kind of the waves. Brad and I if he gets off from work early enough, we like to take late afternoon drives and go get coffee. And we just did this Friday. Friday's our big date night. Mm-hmm. We go get some crazy junk food for dinner, and we sit in the movie room and for hours just binge watch. That's our date night.
Okay.
So we were on our way to go get some food and driving on the interstate, and I literally felt so heavy, and I'm like, I couldn't even describe it. I didn't know why. There was nothing. Him and I are just driving, having our coffee, having a great afternoon, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, almost where I was panicking. And I'm like, okay, Michelle, get your shit together.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're fine. So we pull into the parking lot of where we were going to get something to eat. And Brad's like, he goes, I don't even know what's going on. And I'm looking at him like, God, did he read my mind? And he's like, I feel so heavy right now. And I just started crying. And I'm like, I didn't want to say anything because we were having such a good time. I didn't want to, ruin our moment.
Right.
But of course he said something because he always says something. And we're both bawling, and we felt Sage at the exact same time. And I'm like, wow, what does that mean? What are you trying to tell us something? Or we just experienced Sage together, and it was a hard moment. But at the same time, it was a beautiful moment for him and I to share together. And
I love that.
I don't know if you and Daniel have that, because I know it's hard.
I wish we had that little story like that. That was a really good. I wish I had one of those. There are definitely times I feel like I have to carve out those times together. Whereas I go away every anniversary, and it's gotten
by
easy.
Yourself.
By myself. Daniel and I used to go together.
Okay.
And then when he was really busy with work, he couldn't go away. So I'm like, well, I'm still going.
Yeah.
And then last year his work was slower. And so he went with me, and it was really nice because I feel like carving out that time to then ask those questions, when do you think about William, or how, I don't know, to have those conversations that, like you said, you would not have said anything had Brad not said something. And so that's how I feel whenever something happened. And I mean, Daniel would, just like Brad, even if he wasn't experiencing that, he would have loved for you to say that and be there with you in that. But that's how I feel. I feel like I don't want to make this sad moment. Here we are on a date night, and I'm really struggling over here. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, do you not want to go get food now? Or do you not, and then I'm like, I don't need you fixing it. I don't know. Right. It's just hard. And so for me, carving out that time has been very helpful. And Daniel's going back with me this year. He hadn't gone for a couple years. So I kind of felt like, okay, well, how is it going to be with, are you going to what's this going to look like? Because now I have to worry about, do you want to go to dinner? Do you want to go? Right. The one day we got there and he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I'm going to sit in this chair on the beach the entire day. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay here. And he's like, which he's not really a beach person anyway. He's pale and has red hair. And so I was like, and then I had to be like, I'm not really I mean, I didn't say this, and he does not make me feel that way either. Right. But you just know, when you travel with someone, it's
your instinct.
Yeah. And he went and golfed and had a great time. And I thought, okay, we can do this. We just have to, I need that time on that trip to cry. I need that time to put myself in that hospital room, to think back to that doctor saying, we have one more chance to make his heart start beating. I have to go back to those really dark moments and get myself to a total dependence on the Lord. I kind of walk through all of that. And that for me is really healthy. I have to have that time. And so to have that time together and be able to share it freely. I mean, I know I always can, but for me, helps to have that dedicated time and permission to think about what he'd be like. He was 2. And so, what would he be like as a 10-year-old? What would that look? How would our family look different? I mean, we went on to have another little girl. What does that look like? So,
is that hard for you, knowing that Annie will not know William?
Not really, because we talk about him all the time. And she used to, now she's 6. Like when she was like 4, she would almost use it as like if she was really tired or I told her she couldn't do something or she was like, I just miss my brother. I'm like, okay, well now I think you're like manipulating grief here. Like this is interesting. But she really would. Like that's how, she really would. And
Smart.
So she feels him as part of our family. I mean, she talks about him freely. We're so close with the Martins, with Ava's family, that she considers Ella and Ava her heart sisters. Like it's just so ingrained part of her story.
That. Yeah.
We went on vacation together for fall break. So we all were down in Cabo. Brian's parents were there, Brian's sister and her family. Like it was so great to spend a week vacation with them. Within 30 minutes of being there, we get in the pool and these like group of adults come over and they're like, so your girls just like told us your story. And we're like, yeah. We're like, yeah. They're like, wow. And we're like, it's just, it's so part of their story. And so Annie will say stuff about like, well, I know I didn't even really know him or anything, but it's a cool dynamic to have her now. And really, I don't think we were kind of done having kids. We had a boy, girl. It was like, we're good. So it really is sweet to have her. And she is goofy. She's like a perfect mix of both of them. She's kind of a little rough and tumble like he was, but she's super loving. And so when I got pregnant, because there's a lot of fear in having a child after losing a child. So that was really great, but really hard. But I wanted a boy for Daniel. I hated that he lost a son because, it was only 2. So, when they're 2, they're pretty dependent on their mom, for the first whatever, you're literally their food source. And so, I grieved William right then, and that missing that intimacy of a young little toddler, I knew Daniel grieved the fishing trips he'd never go on, the golf that teaching him to play baseball, coaching a baseball team and all of that. So when we got pregnant, like I wanted that for him. Now I didn't really want that for me because I thought it'd be really hard to have another son and compare the two and everything. Right. And I just thought it'd be harder having a boy. And so we had Annie because I thought what are they going to look like? I don't know. And so we had Annie, and I'll tell you, when she was little, she was a girl that looked exactly like William, just her like face, her profile, and I just kind of had to laugh because I'm like, okay, so then I got this little girl that looks exactly like my son. And so obviously now she doesn't, but she does resemble him. And so God knows exactly what you need. But yeah.
There's some moments where our youngest son, Jude, when he comes home, that I'll just have to take a second look at him because he does look, and even his mannerisms are so much like Sage. And it makes me happy, but gosh, it's also heartbreaking at the same time, and you had William for 2 years and we had Sage for 21, and they were both short. Right. Like Brad has asked me, if you knew what you knew now, would you still want to have Sage? And I said, absolutely. Right. Yeah, there's no question about it. As hard as his life was and the outcome that came from it, absolutely. he just gave us and this family so much joy all the time, and he's part of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He's part of our
I would say the
story.
same thing, walking through the grief of losing a child. And I would say most people would probably say that, as hard as that grief has been, especially, you have those first, it's walking through the initial loss and then the life after. I mean, I'm sure the same for you. There's your life before losing Sage, and there's your life after losing Sage. And it's just everything about me is different. My perspective, my outlook, the way I love others, just everything, the way I go about my life is very different.
And I hate to say this, but it's better.
Right. Oh gosh.
I'm
absolutely.
a much better mom. I'm a much better wife. I'm a much better friend because of Sage.
And my faith is so much deeper.
Oh.
And so and I think, man, and I read in the Bible about the suffering and the joy that can come in the suffering. And I'm grateful that I have those valleys that I'm like, yes, amen to that. And there's so much, I don't think that depth of the Lord I could experience having not been through what I've been through. And yeah, I feel the same way, just so grateful for those valleys. Now, there's times where I wouldn't sit there and say that. And there's, I'd always say it, but there's not this glass. And now grief is okay. And I'm really managing well. And there's still those hard days where I'm like, Lord, I need your strength. I don't have any. I'm really sad. I let it sink in of like, I lost a child, and it just kind of, you can I don't know if you do this, like the sadness can come in, and then I almost spiral down into like, is this really my life? This grief forever, dealing with this, managing, holding this really heavy story forever.
And it's exhausting, to be honest, to always carry, because you do, even though it's gotten better,
right?
You still carry it, and it's still hard, and it still hurts, and it's just always with you from the moment, like my eyes wake up in the morning. There's like maybe a second where like you breathe, but then it's like, oh, it's there. My friend's there again. Like, okay, we'll start our day together, and but I think it's okay that you do have those bad days, and I think it's okay that you're mad. That's what we're.
Right.
And my relationship with Jesus is so different now. Like, I'll just sit there and talk to him.
Right.
Like, I'm like, gosh, he's so good. Like, he's so kind. He has, through this tragedy, he has blessed me, and I am so grateful.
Right.
I am just so, so grateful. And I want to just kind of switch a little bit, because we're talking about gratitude and, being surrounded and how we've gotten through it. And of course, with friends. And my biggest help has been sitting with other moms like you. And actually, the way you and I met, we met through a mutual friend of ours at a fundraising event. And she just introduced us and told me about what you do, a little bit about your company, your nonprofit. And I was like, oh, that's great. But I was just looking at you and I'm like, I want to be her friend. Like, there was just something just like pulling me towards you. It's like, I know we're going to be friends. And we ended up sitting together that night at dinner and just talking. And it was just this really, really deep connection. And then you told me that you lost a son. And I was like, that's it. It, like, you can almost feel when the empathy that other moms have just by a few words. Like, I just felt your soul in a way. And I know that sounds corny and weird.
I love it.
But like, I felt instantly connected to you that night. And we've been friends ever since. And so I came and volunteered at Faithfully Restored. And I'm not going to tell the story because you tell it better. So introduce us to Faithfully Restored.
Absolutely. Well, kind of goes back to when I got home from the hospital and I saw that care package with all those letters, because it was in a tight friend group. And for being in our early 30s, we just experienced a lot of heavy things. We had a late term miscarriage. And that summer before, in 2015, before I lost William, our friend Heather got diagnosed with breast cancer. And so, I mean, she had just turned 30. I mean, we were young. Yeah. Also, as we were all having kids, my best friend Jamie was struggling with infertility. They found out they couldn't have biological children. Walked through that with her. And the way we chose to love on our group of friends, we were like, let's write these notes. Let's have, just encourage them, let them know they're not alone. And so that's what we would do. And so when I got that care package with the notes, I was like, okay, this is it. And I felt it. I knew what reading a note from someone and hearing that you're not alone in such a meaningful way meant in my days of grief. I mean, I saved those cards. I had them for 30 days. And then other people showed up like that. I mean, remember in my mailbox was a gift card to a restaurant they didn't sign their name. They just said, we're thinking about you. And those things mattered. Those note cards mattered. Those words, those on a random Tuesday to get a text from someone that says, I'm still praying for you, that mattered. And so I felt it.
Because people disappear.
Right.
Like, especially a year after 2 years. I mean, 8 years, you know, it changes. Your friend group changes.
Right.
The notes stop.
Right. It really does. And we had such great community. It felt like a couple months we're still going strong and everything. And then, but honestly, those cards that came in the beginning, it was so overwhelming. I didn't even, I had a pile of them that I just couldn't even read, because I'm like, this is really my life. And this, you almost
makes you more sad in a way.
It's all these people are really sad for me. This is great, but I remember the day that I went and there were no more cards in the mailbox. And I just thought, oh, this still feels really hard for me. And now I'm feeling more and more alone. Yeah. And so our friends also, just kind of like how we met, once you walk through something, you start to kind of be in this club of the moms that have lost kids, of people that have gone through cancer, of people that have adopted. And so our friends, we started hearing about all these situations. People would reach out and say that so-and-so lost a child. Do you care if I connect you? Or this person just got diagnosed with cancer. And so we were hearing all these heavy stories, and just, it's like, what can we do with them? And we can get together and we can pray. And we'd always be asking, pray for this person. We heard this and we're like, gosh, this is all just there's so much hurting. Because I also think walking through something, your eyes are kind of more open to the brokenness of this world and the amount of hurt and pain. You just become more aware of it, I think. And so 3 of us go to fellowship, and we were walking through James, and it was an Act of Faith series. So we'd sit there every Sunday and be like, okay, this is what the Bible tells us. This is true. We believe this. What are we doing? And so when William died in December, 6 months later, Hayes Springer passed away. He was 8 years old, was killed in a car wreck in Brentwood. I didn't know him. I didn't know his family, but we had a mutual friend, and they called me and they said, what did people do for you with William that we could do for Jenny Rebecca? That was the mom of Hayes. And so I kind of took her through some meaningful support that they had done. And I said, I'm going to write her a note and send her a book that I loved, that I read. And so I did that, and I left my phone number, and I said, this is really hard. I'm only 6 months ahead of you, but you are going to be okay. And I'm here if you need anything. And so she reached out, and the way the Lord has used that friendship, just like ours, just like every mom in that group, there's just something special about connecting with people that have similar experiences. And so, we got to walk through we both had another child after. We got to walk through that together. So when Heather, Jamie, and I decided, we're going to get together once a month, and we're going to write notes and send care packages to all these women that we're hearing about. And we're like, let's ask Jenny Rebecca to join us. So we did. we decided to meet on my back porch. It was raining that night. We decided we're not having wine. Like we're going to intentionally, like this is not turning into like a wine night on the back porch.
Girls night out.
Girls night out. Like nope. This is, we're going to be intentional. We're going to write notes and we're going to pray for these women by name and just send them something, because that's how we were loved on. And we knew that's what we knew to do, honestly. And so we did that, and that went for a couple months, and there was no shortage of women's names that we had. And so in early 2019, we thought, I think our husbands were like, okay, are we supporting every woman you hear about? We're like buying gifts for every woman that you hear about. And we're like, well, let's start a nonprofit. And so we didn't know anything about nonprofits. We Googled how to start a nonprofit. There was like a little checklist. I remember you had to pay like $250, and it was like, I was filling out the paperwork. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm paying the $250 that it cost us to get going. We decided a name. I mean, it was just that it was so grassroots and organic and like feeling called. People showed up for you. The Lord's like, I put people in your place to show you my love, my kindness, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And this is what you can do for others. And so as we were meeting early 2019, I was finishing up my 10th year of teaching at Ensworth. And I just really felt a stirring to leave. And I didn't know what was next. My husband was like, you need a job. And I was like, do I need a job? I don't know. And so we wrestled all that summer he was like, well, just go back for one more year and think about what you want to do, which I'm like, you can't really do that you shouldn't do that at any school, but I was like, I can't like have one foot in, one foot out. And so, and we had planned a launch event for Faithfully Restored. And we're like, we're just going to get together at our church, invite a bunch of friends, family, women, and share our hopes and dreams. And so that was August of 2019. And earlier that month, a week before school started, I went into my headmaster's office and I was like, I feel very called away from this and I'm going to leave. And he was like, okay. He's like, I'm a little disappointed. It's a week before school. I'd already gotten my class list. Like it was bad. And so, but I knew this is how God showed up. That a few days before I was at gymnastics at Let It Shine with Annie, and her teacher, who was like 20 something, was like, I told her, I was like, I just had to like say it out. I'm like, I think I'm going to leave my job. And she's like, oh, okay. And she said, Jamie, you never know who's praying for that job. And as soon as she said that, I was like, I actually do know who's praying for that job. Like another teammate had left and they didn't hire a girl we really liked. And I was like, I actually do know who is praying for that job. And it was in that I felt a little freedom of, it's going to be okay. Like I felt so called away from it. I wish the Lord would have been like, here's what's next right now. But I just trust that. And so I always, if we're speaking or anything, I always say, like, if you're feeling the Spirit calling you to something, say yes. Like God's got the perfect plan, even if it doesn't make sense. Like be prayerful in that. I mean, I look back on that summer and I was so prayerful because I was like, Lord, whatever you have, like show me what you have for me. Like I want what you want for me. And I just didn't have clarity on it until right before that I was to leave. And so I left that meeting and I was about to walk out the door and our headmaster turned, he's like, Jamie, I was like, yeah. And he's like, you did it. And he's like, and it's okay. I was like, no, thanks. Okay. And so that was August. We had a kickoff event. We just shared our hopes and dreams. And our mission was through hope in Jesus, because that is how the four of us get out of bed. That's how we make it through cancer diagnosis and relapsing and loss and infertility and adoption struggles and all of it. Through hope in Jesus, Faithfully Restored lifts up women who need care, encouragement, and community. And that was our goal. We wanted to show up for people or for women, and no matter what it is they're walking through, just let them know they're not alone, they're loved, and there's hope in Jesus. And so we started, in August, we had that kickoff event, just shared our hopes and dreams. And I started at Annie's preschool, a little $12 an hour, 2 days a week, little job to be there with Annie. And it was fun to be there with her because that fall she was 2 and William was at that same little preschool he had started that fall when he was 2 and just, obviously just had that fall there. And so it was really sweet to be there and watch her do the things that he would have done and be there with her. Didn't really see that then as a gift. I just thought well, I've got to do something here. This seems easy enough. Although my first day at the job, I was used to teaching 2nd grade, and the first day, this is pre-K, and a girl comes out of the bathroom and she was like, teacher, can you pull up my pants? And I'm like, oh my gosh, what has led me? What am I doing? What am I doing here? Oh gosh. But it was so sweet to be there with her and exactly what I needed. And someone at that launch event called me and they said, we really want to do an end of year donation for Faithfully Restored. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And so they donated $10,000, which we were using all of our own money. And so we were like, oh my gosh, we're like, who gave us $10,000? This is amazing. And so I called her and said, we really would like you to join our board, because that's one of on the checklist of how to start a nonprofit. That was one of the things of doing a board. And so we met with her in December of 2019. She sits down and she said, my husband and I feel called to pay your salary for you to be employed by Faithfully Restored. And I was like, what? I started crying and I thought, I wasn't even praying bold enough prayers. I thought, because I was paying for childcare when I would work, because I still had Annie at home. And I thought maybe in that next year, we'd have enough money to pay for childcare. So I wasn't paying for childcare and working. And the Lord's like, I've got you. When we said yes to Faithfully Restored, the Lord was like, I have got you. I've got you in the donations. I've got you in who you serve. I've got you in all of it. And so Heather and I came on staff in early 2020, and we take in prayer requests from all over the country. That's been from the beginning. We want to serve women no matter what it is they're walking through. So, some people are like, that's really broad. I'm like, well, hurt is really broad.
Exactly. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, until we need to, and we haven't felt that we've had to, we want to serve. Now, the highest percentage of women we serve identify with the founder stories. So it's a lot of child loss. It's a lot of cancer, infertility, but we take in prayer requests from all across the country. 80% of the time, that's you submitting for a friend. So that would be you submitting Lee's name that just lost a child. And so that comes in. We now have a staff of 5. Our offices are in the old Dave Ramsey building down in Cool Springs. And so we'll take in that prayer request. It goes to our outreach coordinator, and she's working one-on-one with you. How can we support this woman? What does support look like? That could be a care package. That could be rental assistance. That could be, we furnished a house for a widow here in Nashville that had lost her husband and was moving into a new house. And we're like, we got you. We'll do this. She's praying for a fresh start. And it has been so cool to have the ability to be the hands and feet of Jesus and show up in ways that are so unique and meaningful, and just show them they're not alone. Like you said, one of the things, support kind of dwindles and people go back to their life. And because the founders have walked through these different things, we know what it looks like that first year of loss. And so I love our process for that. So a prayer request will come in and we'll wait a couple months. If it just happened, we'll wait a couple months, because we don't want our card to be in the stack of cards that they have that just seem overwhelming. And so we wait a couple months and then show up with a care package with a note, pray for those women by names. We have prayer meetings once a month at our office, and those are specifically dedicated for praying for those women by name. And so they'll receive a care package. And then this week, We'll do over 150 care packages for women in our system that this previous year have lost a child, a spouse, or their own parent and experiencing their first holiday without that person. That's right. Because we talked about it. And people might acknowledge it at the holiday or close to it, but we send them out now acknowledging we know this holiday is going to look different for you. You're being prayed for. You're not alone. We're here with you. We'll do that before their first Mother's Day, before their first Father's Day.
That's my day.
Yes.
That's when we do the gift packages for Mother's Day, because that's the hardest.
Right.
The hardest time for me is Mother's Day without Sage. And so coming to your office, first of all, your office is amazing. You just feel loved the moment you walk in the door. Your staff is just incredible. Every single one of them I love dearly. But just to sit there in a quiet space, reaching out to another mom. This is their first year, their first Mother's Day without their son or daughter, and literally writing a handwritten note. I mean, selfishly, it helps me as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we started it.
Journey.
Yes,
yeah. But just to let them know that they aren't alone and they're being thought of and prayed for, and just to really, I mean, even your stuff is so good, like little lip balms and cozy socks, and I'm like, it's just a personal self-care little package, and it takes no time at all. But I think it makes a huge difference.
From the beginning, I have wanted volunteer opportunities for that reason, because I know the healing that comes from writing a note to a mom that has lost a child. I know what it is going to feel like for them. I mean, our gifts are incredible. They're great. We partner with Thrive Cosmetics. We partner with Barefoot Dreams socks through Magpies here. We get really good stuff.
You do.
And people comment about that. But then it's that handwritten note of just feeling seen. I mean, and we always do it before the holiday so that they feel seen as that holiday approaches. And it's been really important to give volunteers, and so many of our volunteers, like you, serve out of their own pain. And to give, I mean, we'll go later today to do some of those first holiday packages. And there will be moms there that do it in honor of their child because they've experienced that first holiday. And so we have a ton of volunteers serve out of their own pain. And that's an important part of what we do, is give women the opportunity to come into our office. They'll get 3 or 4 names. They come in, it's almost set up like a little store, and put together a curated care package, write the note, pray over it, and we send them from our office to women across the country. And in that same sense, after that first year, we do anniversary of loss care packages. So if you're in our system, the month before that anniversary, you'll get something from us. You'll be prayed for by name and be sent something, because, I mean, it'll be 8 years this year. And like I said, it gets to just November and I'm anticipating December. It's hard. It just still is. There's a heaviness there. And so for us to be able to see women and acknowledge that anniversary is, to me, really powerful. And it's an honor to get to, our whole goal is to not be a one and done, but to truly walk alongside women for as long as they need. And with loss, we were just talking at a team meeting. It's kind of for loss, it's a process that we can do. There's dates. It's harder than to walk alongside someone with a cancer diagnosis, to where there are different stages of their journey and stuff. But we really try to kind of circle back around, and we'll partner with different events here that we'll go and take their flowers after an event. And then volunteers will write notes, and, we'll do cancer patients that are local. And so we'll have volunteers come in, deliver the flowers. They get it on their doorstep with a little note that says, "You are loved. You're still being prayed for."
I did not know that. I love that.
And volunteers love delivery too. That's one way we use a lot of volunteers. So we'll do local deliveries like that. But we try to circle back around. And that's something that we'll work on in 2024. Now that we'll celebrate 5 years in August of 2024. And so to have a database of those prayer requests for the last 5 years, we want to be really intentional of going back and continuing to walk alongside those women. So.
Well, Brad always ends his interview with amazing questions, kind of off the cuff. So I'm not going to do that to you.
Okay. You can. I mean, I don't know.
One of my favorite things, and I didn't read it today, but Jesus calling. I have to start my day every morning in stillness and my time with Jesus and my time with Sage. And yes, I'm old. I have to put my readers on. But to read today's, is it the 7th or 8th? 7th. Isn't there such thing as grief brain? Please tell me that there is, because I cannot. I don't remember half of it. Brad can tell me something, and 5 minutes later, I'm like, "Oh, you didn't tell me that."
That might be selective for a husband-wife thing. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
But no, I definitely. I feel it's just trauma. I think I definitely agree with that. There's
an age,
a lot I don't.
Guess.
Yeah,
an age,
all of it
creeping in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are on November 7th. And it says, "Worship me in the beauty of holiness. All true beauty reflects some of who I am. I am working my ways in you, the divine artist creating loveliness within your being. My main work is to clear out debris and clutter, making room for my spirit to take full possession. Collaborate with me in this effort by being willing to let go of anything I choose to take away. I know what you need, and I have promised to provide all that abundantly. Your sense of security must not rest in your possessions or in things going your way. I am training you to depend on me alone, finding fulfillment in my presence. This entails being satisfied with much or with little, accepting either as my will for the moment. Instead of grasping and controlling, you are learning to release and receive. Cultivate this receptive stance by trusting me in every situation." Reading this, collaborate with me in this effort by being willing to let go of anything I choose to take away. That's a hard one. I don't feel like Sage was taken away. But you just have to have trust that, like you said, he knows what he's doing.
Definitely. I love that. That was perfect.
Well, I love you, dear friend. I am honored that you agreed to do this. I'm so grateful to be part of Faithfully Restored, and look forward to many years going forward with y'all and walking with you side by side with your grief. My biggest regret is I didn't know William, and I hate that you didn't know Sage.
I know.
But I think they know each other.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was special, and thanks for having me. I love you, dear.
Pleasure. Love you.
Woo! That was so good. So good.
Ladies, you have Brad over here.
Your story. Wow. I didn't, I knew a little bit, but good gracious, that's